Today, we're stepping into the deep, dark void of uncharted space for a story that's going to fundamentally challenge how we think about logic, empathy, and what it actually means to be human. We're going to explore a cinematic tale of impossible choices and unimaginable bravery. It's a story where cold, calculated galactic survival meets the sheer, unpredictable willpower of humanity. Get ready because this is going to be intense.
Imagine the vast, freezing silence of deep space. Out of that silence, a broken, repeating distress signal bleeds through. And it repeated on an exact, relentless loop. 17 seconds. Every 17 seconds, a tiny pulse of pure desperation echoed from a dead world. And the rest of the galaxy? Well, they listened to that 17-second interval, did the math, and just chose to ignore it.
You really have to picture the sheer isolation of this moment. This wasn't some clean, crisp beacon. It was incredibly weak, broken, almost completely buried beneath a thick layer of cosmic static. Just a single, solitary word pushing through the absolute darkness of space. Please.
Another 17 seconds pass. More static, more silence. Then another blind plea into the void. Anyone. You can just feel the suspense, right? The fading hope. It's literally a broadcast from a ghost ship begging for a miracle from a universe that has already done the math and walked away.
And then, the critical phrase. They're still alive. This is the exact moment everything changes. Because while the massive, heavily armed alien stations completely ignored this transmission, a single passing human cargo ship actually intercepted it. And when that human captain heard those 4 words, an unthinkable, highly irrational mission began.
Section 1. A signal ignored. So to really understand this universe, we have to look at the sheer, cold logic of the coalition. This planet was way beyond the edge of mapped territory. Just a dead rock. No resources, zero strategic value. Officially, on the galactic maps, it simply didn't exist. So when monitoring stations picked up a faint signal from a ghost world, their calculating logic kicked right in. They assumed it was pirates, or scavengers, or maybe a trap. To them, the risk vastly outweighed any potential reward. The math just didn't add up.
But, you see, the humans didn't do the math. Or actually, scratch that, they did do the math. They just didn't care. When the human cargo crew heard that tape, there was zero debate. The ship's engineer summed it up perfectly. He said, "That is the sound of us making a terrible decision." They were completely self-aware. They knew it was a trap, they knew it was incredibly dangerous, but there was this grim, almost cheerful acceptance of the risk. The captain just nodded, said yep, and changed course.
Section 2. Poor survival instincts.
Up on the ship, the alien navigator was absolutely horrified. He's pointing out the uncharted region, the high probability of pirates, biological threats, the unstable terrain. I mean, his logic was flawless. It was designed to keep the crew alive. But the human captain's logic? It was just 3 simple words. There are survivors. That single, unshakable motivation completely overrides every single valid point the alien makes.
And as the entire human crew cheerfully agreed to fly straight into a very probable death trap, the alien navigator sat down and had this profound realization. He finally understood the galactic stereotype. Humans have poor survival instincts. From an alien evolutionary standpoint, empathy that overrides basic self-preservation, that's a fatal flaw. It's completely irrational. But as we're going to see, it's also humanity's absolute greatest strength.
Section 3. Into the ticking wreck.
The descent was an absolute nightmare. Imagine this. The ship is fighting through violent black storms, getting ripped apart by lightning. Down below, scanners are failing because the surface is literally covered in mountains of twisted metal and fluctuating radiation. They finally find a wrecked Coalition science vessel buried deep beneath rock and ice, half destroyed. The humans put on their helmets, mostly because, as the engineer joked, they knew the structure could collapse at any second, and they walked right into the freezing, flickering darkness, past corridors filled with bodies.
The tension in those dark corridors must have been suffocating. But then they heard it. Weak breathing. They cleared a collapsed doorway and found 3 survivors, huddled, starving, barely conscious. And as the captain knelt down to tell them they were safe, one of them looked up in pure disbelief and just whispered, "Humans?" Because nobody else in the entire galaxy would have been stupid enough to come this far.
But they couldn't even celebrate. Suddenly, the ship violently shakes, warning alarms start screaming, the timeline completely collapses, the reactor core is destabilizing, and they have literally minutes left.
The humans grab the weakened survivors and run. The wreck is screaming all around them. A corridor caves in completely. They are trapped. The captain spots these small, narrow ventilation shafts up above them, but they're too small. There's nowhere near enough room, and the clock is ticking straight down to 0.
Section 4. The Unthinkable Sacrifice.
The humans immediately begin painfully, slowly shoving the survivors up into the narrow shafts. The reactor alarms are absolutely deafening. The alien navigator climbs up after the last survivor, looks back down, and realizes the humans are still below. They aren't climbing. He screams, "What are you doing?" The captain just shoves his oxygen tank up into the shaft. The navigator does the terrible math in his head instantly. There wasn't enough room, not enough oxygen, not enough time. Someone had to stay behind.
Through the thick smoke and the flickering electrical sparks of a dying ship, the human captain looked up at the panicked alien navigator. He was totally calm. He was even smiling faintly. And his final words weren't some grand epic speech. They were just a quiet instruction. Take care of them. And then, the reactor detonated.
Section 5. The place they cared.
The blast was so massive, it lit up the storm clouds for miles around. When heavily armored rescue teams finally arrived hours later, they found the survivors and the alien navigator alive near the human ship, cold, injured, but alive. On the journey back to Coalition space, the alien navigator didn't say a single word. He rode in complete, stunned silence. He had just witnessed a species willingly obliterate themselves for absolute strangers.
When they finally reached safety, the navigator quietly asked a surviving scientist why the humans did it, knowing they would die. The answer really defines humanity's place in the stars. He said because humans believe saving one life is always worth the risk. It defies logic, it defies evolutionary programming, but it is the very definition of humanity.
Years later, the Coalition maps were officially updated. That dead, officially non-existent rock finally received a name. But it wasn't named after the massive science vessel that crashed there. It was named in honor of the cargo crew who went where no sane species would ever go. Translated into every known galactic language, the planet's official name became the place humans chose to care. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Is saving one life always worth the risk? The galaxy might say no, but humanity? Humanity will always say yes. Thanks for exploring this with me today. Keep asking the big questions.